Welcome to I'll Marry You, a podcast with me, Olivia Coleman, full of tips and tricks from the UK wedding scene, interviews with industry experts, and a whole lot of oversharing.
Good morning! If you're watching on YouTube, I look like I'm pissed. I'm wafting the camera around. I'm trying to find a good angle because when I do these little intros for the podcast on YouTube, I don't have a filter. And I like a filter because it makes me look better. But instead I just look pale and tired, which I am. Bloody exhausted. It's been a good week, wedding-wise. We had Gabs and Ryan on Saturday at the Mount Without in Bristol, which was gorgeous. Oh my God, the flowers were unbelievable. Ren and May. Unbelievable. And they had drapes hanging from the ceiling, which I've not seen there before, and I've been there a lot. And it was really like, it was a shitty day weather-wise, which actually added to it because it was really atmospheric and lovely. So that was wonderful. Any day, I think I said last week, any day that I wake up with a wedding to go to and I don't have contractions, this is a good day. Went to the midwife yesterday, didn't I? Took James, introduced him as my baby daddy, and it's the only appointment he's been to in this pregnancy. When we were pregnant with Lola, it's like every appointment he was there first, but this one he's like, meh, not bothered, which neither am I, to be honest. Anyway, he came because we were doing the birth plan, which I find very odd because when someone says, what's your birth plan? My plan is to give birth, Karen, you know. It's to give birth safely, quickly, and as pain-free as possible. So that was exciting, I suppose. I don't know. It's really coming in fast. They told me a fun fact. I said, look, I want her to come 10 days early. My last wedding's 14 days before due date. Due on the 21st. I'm not having a Christmas Day baby. The end. So I would like her to come sort of 8 to 10 days early. What can I do? And she said the usual stuff you know about, you know, sex. Gross. I was like, absolutely not. I'm not having sexual intercourse with either myself or my husband or anyone else that might offer. Although apparently nipple play is a thing, a stimulus. Raspberry leaf, loose leaf, raspberry loose leaf tea. That's more my bag. And bouncing on the balls. Not the sexy balls, the birthing ball. Bouncing on the birthing ball, long walks. Curry's not really a thing. Spicy curry. I think she said the only reason people say spicy curry is because it gets your bowels moving. So it sort of just loosens you up generally, which is, you know, a fun image. But she did tell me 6 dates a day. Well, I pointed out that JC doesn't take me on a date unless it's my birthday. And even then it's to Wagamamas. 6 medjool dates a day, which is actually a lot of dates to eat. But if you eat them, apparently that not only will bring on labour, but keep you regular. So there's really no downside. So that's me. That's my update of the week. Now, I am so excited for this episode. It's a part 1 of a 2-parter interview with an industry expert. I teased you on my socials about it. Her name is Felicity, and she is the creator and CEO of a company called Tend Task. I'm probably going to tell you all this in the interview in a minute because it's pre-recorded, obviously. But she's unbelievable. She's fascinating. She reached out to me and asked to be on the podcast, and then I looked into who she is and what she does, and I was like, oh my God, yes. Not only do I want you on the podcast, but I'd like you to give me some free therapy, please, which she basically does. Looking back to when we recorded it a few weeks ago, I'm pretty sure I'm a little too open about my own marriage, but you know me, love and overshare. So she created this virtual course, I suppose, for couples, predominantly heterosexual couples, just because that's the way that she's done it, because obviously every couple is different. But it helps coach you through life's mundane issues, but actually those mundane issues that can sort of snowball and become quite big things in a partnership. she's fascinating, and her insight and her knowledge and her experience into the human psyche and relationships and science and it's really good. I'm really excited to listen to it. So I won't keep you. So this is part 1 with Felicity from 10 Task. Enjoy.
On today's episode of the podcast, I am so excited. I can't tell you. I've been telling everyone about you.
Yeah.
I am interviewing Felicia. How do you pronounce your surname? I'd rather ask than get it wrong.
It's Kashevaroff.
Kashevaroff. Oh my God, you sound like a
Yeah.
member of the dynasty or something. You sound very regal. And Felicia is the creator and CEO of Tend Task, which is, well, we're going to hear all about it, but basically you sort people out. That's what I've culminated it to, is that you sort out relationships and you help couples create a more balanced, healthy, positive relationship. I'm so excited. I was telling this about you to a friend of mine, and I said, as I was talking about it, and I know a little because I'm not totally unprofessional, but I don't know a lot because I like to find things out as I'm talking to you. But I was telling my friend, and she was like, "Are you doing this for your own marriage?" I was like, "Yes, I am." So welcome, Felicia. And Felicia, where exactly are you in America?
I'm in California and Santa Barbara. So it's
so
lovely.
It is we are recording at 1:30 in the morning for
That's
Felicia.
Right.
She's napped and she's back awake. Do you not feel that sicky feeling you get when you have a really early flight?
I mean, a little bit, but that's kind of fun if you don't have to do it all the time.
Yes, true. And if you're doing it for a nice reason, like going on holiday or talking to me,
Precisely, right?
then it's fine. So you're in Santa Barbara. I've been to Santa Barbara. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is. It is lovely here. That's
Are you
true.
from there originally?
No, I grew up in a much less beautiful place in the central part of California. And then I came here to go to school and never left. Lucky
Well,
me.
no, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. So, welcome and thank you so much for talking to us because, like I said, I'm just so excited to learn more about you. Um, let's start at the beginning, and then it's a very good place to start. But in essence, let's just give me a brief blurb of what it is that Tend Task is, and then we can go back to how you began and how you created it and all that jazz.
Well, 10 Task is a relationship coaching platform. So my focus is on relationship equity and helping couples to build balanced, mutually beneficial, joyful relationships that last. I kind of my back. If we're going to start at the beginning, my background is in the social sciences, and I've always been interested in kind of the way that systems affect our individual lives. And if you look at the patriarchy as one example of that, it definitely has an impact on the way that our lives and our relationships and our marriages um, come together. So I decided to create this platform where couples could find a way to create more harmony in their relationships. Um, because I had my own relationship that was not as balanced as I would have liked it to be. So I found myself in, even though I was a scholar and a feminist, I found myself in really traditional roles, and my ex-husband and I couldn't find our way out of that. So I started looking at the science of it and how it plays out in particularly heterosexual relationships. So that is how Tend Task came to be. So when I say it's a relationship coaching platform, I started with technology. I built an invisible labor tracker back in 2018.
What is that?
So an invisible labor tracker is it was an app where primarily women could see the impact of their unpaid work. So essentially,
I bet you were
what
very busy.
was very busy. I was very busy, and this was before pre-pandemic. Now we're having much more robust conversations about like the emotional labor and the mental load and the impact that has on our relationships. But when women saw this, they were surprised that for many women it was a shock that that was something that they could do, that they could quantify the time that they spent caring for their families. And many women downloaded the app, many women used it to have conversations with their partners, but what they told me and my co-founder at the time was that they needed solutions. They needed
Mm.
actual tangible solutions to help their partners to engage more in the care of their homes and their families and in having a much more balanced relationship.
When you talk about sort of the invisible labor tracker, do you mean in terms of labor then with this particular first app, are you talking about physical things such as tidying the living room, making the bed, doing the washing, or are you talking about the mental load, like thinking about what to cook for dinner that night?
Yeah, all of it, right? So there's, kind of the mental load can be broken down um, into multiple parts. So um, there's the actual tangible physical labor that we do, which is visible, right? If you
Mm.
haven't done the dishes, someone knows that you haven't done the dishes. Like that's can be seen, but
Well,
it's,
you
it's often
say
not
that, but
noticed.
no, people think they don't think, and when I say people, I mean men. They don't think that someone's done it.
Yeah.
They just assume it. They just. I God, I've
Magic
got so
dishes
many.
fairy comes and
Yes.
does the thing. Yeah. So there's that. There's the physical labor of the care and feeding of our families. There is the cognitive labor, like you're talking about, thinking about the things that need to happen, thinking about the meal planning for the week, which is a huge,
Mm.
massive responsibility. And then there is the emotional labor. So that is checking in with everyone's mood and making sure that, your partner is, maybe not frustrated or has
Yeah.
gotten enough sleep, or your kids are thriving. They're not worried about something that's happened at school. So there's a lot of energy that goes into it, and much as we know, much of this work is done by women, and it has a tremendous impact on not just our mental health and our physical health, our earning capacity, but it's really a global issue. This invisible labor, it's a lot of work that women do that is unpaid.
That's interesting that you say a global issue because I it's something that I have recently become even more interested in because I've been with my husband for 15 years and we have a 4.5-year-old and I'm about to pop again, which is a ridiculous idea. So the whole men, women, nature, nurture, children relationship, I just find it fascinating. And I was thinking recently, I follow various women on Instagram, and in my experience, and maybe it's just me sort of and the algorithm and choosing different people, but in my experience, the women who are speaking out about the patriarchy and all of these issues that we're experiencing, even though the women experiencing them are from all over the world, the people speaking out tend to not be British. And so then I wonder, is it more of a sort of British stiff upper lip, old worldy, timey thing where the men go out to work and the women stay at home and look after the children? But are you saying that actually that's not just a British thing? That is a global thing where men are expected to fulfill a certain role and women are expected to fill a different role?
Well, I think, I don't want to speak about, kind of the cultural and perhaps religious,
Mm.
things that come into play. But from my perspective, at least in the Western world, the it's definitely it's a huge issue, particularly in the U.S. because our systems are not set up to support it. So our childcare costs are
Mm.
outrageous. There's no standard for maternity or paternity leave, any sort of parental leave. So it's becoming a crisis point issue, where you have no systems are set up to support parents, and then women are expected to both do all the things around the home, do all the things to care for the kids, and work full time. And that's not sustainable to do all the things all the time.
But we
So,
do.
most of, but we do, but it takes a toll. It takes a really serious toll on us.
Mm.
But I can connect you with some people in the UK who are doing good work on this subject.
Yes,
For
I would.
sure.
Yes, anyone that's fighting this battle. When you
Yeah.
started learning about it all, then, so was it your own? And I don't want to sort of, if you're not comfortable getting too personal about it, then that's
I'm
absolutely fine.
super
So I don't want.
comfortable. You can ask me anything.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So am I. I'm a terrible oversharer. This could turn into essentially a therapy session. I should probably call my
Let's
husband
do
and put him on
it.
speakerphone. But so did you start thinking about it because of your own experience in your own marriage, or were you already studying social sciences before things started to go a bit haywire?
Well, I think my marriage was the impetus for creating this business and this program. But I think as someone who was educated in kind of feminist theory and gender studies, I I think I was a pretty arrogant going into my relationship, thinking that
Mm,
this wouldn't happen to me, right? Like I know better, and I had conversations. My ex husband thought he wanted to be an equal partner too. We just didn't get granular about how that looked in real life.
mm,
That's the thing. I think that a lot of young couples think that they're deeply in love. They're planning their weddings. They're so excited to
mm,
be together, and then they don't get granular about, like, what does that really look like? How is this going to play out in our lives, in a way that suits both of our needs. And so I think that um, that's where the cognitive dissonance kind of came in, and I said, okay, well, I tried everything I knew how to do to save this marriage. Um,
mm.
how can I help other people do better earlier?
How I always say to my couples, well, I always say it to anyone actually, I think it is absolutely paramount to live with a person before you marry them. Would you agree?
I would agree. I would agree 1,000,000%. I
Mm.
think that's very important. And also, even if you live together, marriage changes everything. It just
But so
changes
that's interesting that you say
the
that,
dynamic.
because some people say, oh, sort of if I talk to my couples after the wedding, oh, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. I do think personally, I think marriage does change everything. I think becoming parents changes
That's it.
everything.
You nailed it. You nailed it. That's when things really go off the rails, if you haven't been clear about
But
how
it's
you're gonna
so
do things.
interesting to hear you say about talking about how granular that can be, and what exactly that looks like. Because I suppose in an ideal world, you'd sit down with your partner that you hope to marry, and you would have spoken about, do you want children? Do you want to live in the city or the country? How important is money to you? Are you religious? What does your family look like? Your career goals, your life ambitions, all of these big stuff. But actually, you're right in that how helpful would it be to sit down before you get married and say, right, what do you think needs to be done around the house every day? How often do you think the bathroom needs to be needs to be cleaned? How
Yeah.
my wedding last weekend, literally, I said it in the ceremony when she first went over to his house when they were first dating. He said, "It's really fun. You don't need to clean the shower because the water does it."
Ooh.
But it's things like that. It's actually the day-to-day stuff. Can you cook? Yeah, but are you going to cook? What
Yeah.
time do you plan on coming home? Do you know that whites don't go in with darks? And that's so interesting that you say that. It's because you don't really have the conversations about the little stuff. I think that's what you learn when you live with someone.
Yes. And if you live with somebody, unless you have children before you get married, which many people do, you don't really talk about any of that either. You know, who's gonna get up with the baby, and am I gonna are either one of us gonna take a break from our career? What are the financial ramifications of that? You know, who's going to stay home if the baby gets sick? Who is going to schedule all of the medical appointments? Who is going to do the meal planning and the shopping? Like all of those things, um, we don't really think about or
Mm.
consider until it becomes unsustainable, you know. And
Yeah.
because we're conditioned as women, many of us who were raised as women, um, there's an internal voice telling us that that's our responsibility, and our partner, if they were raised as a man, is also being told that that's our responsibility. But we live in a modern world, and you just can't do it all.
Do you know anything about the history behind that thinking? I mean, how does it go way back I mean, I'm not very intelligent in terms of history, but does it go way back to when we were bloody monkeys, or does it go back to just sort of the Victorian times when those were the roles? What is it? Where does it come from? That thinking that women are the default carer and the
Mm.
default, let's say, emotional provider or the default parent, and yet men are not expected to fulfill that position. Do you know historically where that comes from?
Well, I think it's different in different cultures, and you know, I can probably speak more to, you know, kind of European and you know, American standards, but the I think when it comes to the labor of women, um, I don't know how political you want to get about this, but free labor is great for capitalism, right? Like the free labor that women provide is has been encouraged and expected for most of our history. I couldn't pinpoint a moment in time, but there are definitely many other cultures who have a much more fluid approach to how care is done, a much more, you know, village type approach to care, where it's not, you know, but in Britain and in the US, it's very individualistic. Like each family is expected to kind of care for themselves, and there may not be that extended family to provide additional support.
Yeah.
And so
And I
that's
find
how
that
it gets really
I find that
unmanageable.
interesting, the "it takes a village" thing. But, like, that wasn't just created. That phrase didn't just appear in the last 10 years. That was because back in the day, that's how it was, wasn't it? There was the group of men that would go out to work and the group of women that would stay at home, and everyone would look after everyone's children, and everyone would help and clean each other's houses and cook each other's dinners, and it was a real community. Whereas now I almost
Yeah,
feel like, and this is sort of a bit vague and I'm sort of brushing over the details, but I almost imagine that you could say we're still expected to do those things, but we don't have the village. We it's just us.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we're expected to do all the same things. In fact, more,
Mm,
because modern parenting is super intensive, and there's these very high expectations on, you know, how much time you spend with your children, and how, you know, how enriched their lives are. And I'm not saying any of that is bad necessarily. I'm just saying it's like one human being cannot do all those things
mm.
and stay healthy and sane while doing it.
So,
Um,
well, that's it. It's the mental health, but then that's a whole other topic because that's something that is so. Even though, like you say, we're talking about that a lot more nowadays. It's still not. It's still so hard to quantify the
yeah.
invisible labor, and it's so hard to explain the physical ramifications and social ramifications of your mental health and the load that doing all this takes upon you.
Yeah.
When you developed the app that created sort of the quantifiable labor, how did you even begin to do that? Did you look at sort of the workplace and then compare? I mean, I don't even know how I would begin, because in my mind, you know, I maybe I'm being overzealous, but if he leaves an empty toilet roll on that holder one more time, that's like £100 to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fair. And we all have like kind of our triggers that are super annoying. But the way that I did it, or the way that we did it, is kind of we looked at all of the elements that go into caring for a home and a family, and we looked at those according to time spent doing them. So
Okay.
and so it was a way of looking at how much of your time in your day is spent doing these kinds of tasks that are unpaid, and undervalued. And then, there was a calculator to show that if you had paid someone else to do that, this is how much that would cost.
Is
So
this
this is
app still in
that's what
existence?
labor is, right? Is you're trading your time for doing work, and in most
Wow.
cases, people get compensated for that.
Is this app still out there? Can I still download this app?
It is, but I've adjusted it based on the needs of the users, so it doesn't have that calculator anymore. What I do now is I use it as a way for couples to manage the load more equitably together, to split their time, to communicate clearly about what needs to be done, who's doing what, and um, how that gets done. So it's morphed over time based on the needs of the people who are using it.
So you got into it, you did all that. And were you creating all this whilst your own marriage was breaking down? Because that's
Yeah,
intense.
it was hard, and then we had a pandemic too. It was hard.
And it was only quite recently, really, in the
Well, it
grand scheme of
was.
things.
Yeah, so I started, the app was developed in 2018, and then um, the pandemic happened obviously in 2020. So yeah, it wasn't, and it wasn't just me. So my co-founder, her marriage was also ending, and we had a long lasting, kind of friendship and relationships. We talked often about this dynamic. And then we started talking to everyone we knew, all the women, mothers
Mm.
in our lives, about their experiences. And we just found that it was very common, whether women worked outside of the home or stayed home with the children, that this imbalance was happening, and there was a lot of frustration um, happening. So yeah.
And did you, when you were doing that initial sort of research and sort of dipping your toe into the pool, did you talk to men about it?
Yes, I did. I did talk to men about it.
How did that go? Did they not just say, "Stop nagging me, Felicia"?
They did. They
I'll
did
do
say
it when I
that.
get round to it.
They did. I talked to a lot of men who didn't understand what I was talking about.
No.
It was really hard. And so that's kind of part of this evolutionary process of where I've gotten to, is we cannot solve this problem if we don't engage men on this issue, if we cannot communicate with them about it. And so that's where I kind of developed this program in working with couples together, because we can talk about it all day, right? We
Oh yeah.
know what we're doing, and but if we can't get men to understand the mental load and cognitive labor and all of those things that need to happen every day, we're not going to make any progress. So it's really important that both couples. So early in those early days, I was fundraising, and I had investors who were like, "Oh my God, do not tell my wife about this." It's like, okay, well, I think maybe you're not the right investor for me. That happened a lot.
Oh, how
So
funny.
yeah,
Oh, I can imagine, because I mean, I find in my experience quite often it's that first initial hurdle. It's the initial
yeah.
put down that first wall, and then we can discuss it, rather than, you've got to get past the dismissive sort of, yeah, all right, yeah, yeah, yeah. You, because then the
Dismissive or
conversation flows.
defensive. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I work
Yes.
so hard. Can't you see I do help? It's it yeah,
But I
but people need tools to move through that. So that's what our users told me is we need tools, which is what led me to coaching. Because coaching is a evidence-based behavioral change strategy, right?
Mhm.
So that's what we need to do. We need to change our behaviors. And so, kind of combining that understanding of the larger issue with individual change is what I'm trying to do here.
So tell me, what's the difference, would you say, between coaching and therapy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So therapy is a mental health treatment, right? So
Hmm.
therapy is provided by mental health professionals, and I love therapy. I've been through lots of therapy myself. It is much more focused on the past. It's focused on healing traumas and, sorting out mental health conditions. Coaching is focused on the future. So coaching is how to set goals and take action. So coaching and therapy are very synergistic. Like they can work really well together. A lot of people are do both at the same time. But when I'm coaching a couple, um, they my assumption is that they are well enough to do this work, that they have enough, they've done enough healing, or they
Hmm.
have a therapist who can handle any mental health issues. So I will always refer people to therapy if that is the right route for them to go versus coaching.
Because
Did
I
that answer
find
your
that
question?
interesting. Just thinking about just the word coaching. If
Yeah.
if I said to my British husband or my British father, we're going to do some coaching, he might be like, all right. But if I said, let's do some therapy, whoa, no, 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 no. It's sort of an instant. And I know that I'm totally generalizing, but it's a lot more prolific in the States than it is in England. And we're
Yeah.
still really trying to really trying to fight the battle and wave the mental health flag and say, actually, talking about it's a really good thing. But I think that just that change in word could help encourage a partner, particularly a male one, to engage in behavioral change.
Absolutely. It's action oriented, right? It's not this ambiguous we do still need to talk about our feelings, but
We do still need a little
but it's
couch
not
time.
just feelings focused, right? We're talking about taking actionable steps, learning to communicate in a clear and concise and approachable way so that our partner can actually hear us. We're learning how to listen actively,
Mm,
and to take steps towards having a great relationship. My former co-founder, she always made this joke that like men are competitive about everything, right? They're competitive about everything. Like,
yeah.
why not be competitive about being the best partner you could possibly be,
Because they know
right?
they'll lose. They know they'll lose.
But they don't have to. They've full capacity to do all the things that women do. I know that there's this kind of assumption that women do the caregiving because we're innately better at it, but
Yeah.
brain science does not tell us that that's true. Like men can do, they just need to do it and learn,
Yeah.
and just like anything else, you have to practice in order to be good at anything. And if you don't do it, of course you're not going to be good at it.
I think the idea being being actionable in um, solving these issues is amazing. I think I send my couples questionnaires, and one of my favorite, and they answer them individually. And one of my favorite sections of the questionnaire to read together is I ask what annoying little habits your partner has, maybe around the house or just in your relationship, or just annoying little quirks that drive you mad. And 9 times out of 10, his and hers answers will correlate. So he will
Mm,
say, she just nags all the time, and she will say he doesn't do the shit I ask him to do when I ask him to do it. And it always makes me laugh, and it always makes me feel a little bit better about my own marriage and my my own life. But I had a bride recently, and she said, I love him with all my heart, but sometimes I wish he didn't have to come up with a solution. I want to just complain. I
Yeah,
want to just sit there and say, I'm fed up, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overworked, I'm underpaid, I'm miserable. I can't tell you why, but I am. And
yeah,
I don't want him to fix it. I want him to just sit and listen. And actually, what I think what you're saying is you're giving them the tools to understand without having to resolve a problem.
that's right. Yeah, that's a really important, um, how you want to be supported
Mm.
is individual. I mean, there many times there's this assumption that men are fixers and they want to, and they're conditioned to do that, right? They're told that they have to be problem solvers all the time. But being able to communicate, this is how I want to be supported. And you can even have, code words for that kind of conversation. This is a whining conversation. Like, I just want to complain. And let's set a timer for 30 minutes, and I'm just gonna complain, and your job is just to nod and rub my back and tell me I'm great and everyone
Oh.
else is wrong.
Oh my God, that would be the dream. That would be the absolute dream.
So this week's RSVP is a bit different because have you listened to the episode with me and Al, where I basically spent the entire time talking about my pelvic floor? Well, someone DM'd me on Instagram and was like, I'm a pelvic floor specialist. Get in touch. I just thought that was so fun. So that's really all I'm going to tell you about. I have other DMs, but I just thought that was a fun one. So I might get in touch with her. It's very sweet to reach out about my pelvic floor, isn't it? That was another thing I said to the midwife yesterday. There was a poster, don't ignore your pelvic floor. I said to James, you've got a pelvic floor. It's probably grubby, because as are you. Don't forget to message me anything, any stories, any questions, any advice that you would like to share, any experiences you've had in the wedding industry and or otherwise pelvic floor wise. I want to hear it all. I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you find this podcast even remotely helpful or moderately entertaining, share with all your friends and family. You can DM me any questions, queries, if you want to share any stories on the podcast Instagram at I'll Marry You Podcast. Get in touch. I want to hear all your tall tales. See you soon.
I'll Marry You is a podcast by Olivia Coleman. The music is Mr. Sunnyface by Wayne Jones, and the show is produced and edited by Drew Toynbee.